The one thing I would stress for people that like want to get better, want to learn how to play or get better playing, or they're coming to it later in life or in midlife and feel like, hey, I do have time for this now. Is to just chip away at it every day, even if it's 15 minutes.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them of the silver-aged vintage, and they are learning bass, having the time of their life playing music that they love. You should come join them and experience that incredible transformation for yourself. As I always say, you're never too old to groove, so let's play bass. I've got a special guest this week. Nathan Peck is an outstanding bassist. He plays both upright and electric bass. He was raised in a musical family, surrounded by music pretty much right from the beginning. Growing up outside Pittsburgh, he got very serious with the bass, and he performed there regularly, first with family members, and then eventually with people like Roger Humphreys, Joe Harris, Jimmy Ponder. He learned a lot about jazz and other styles of music, and he's performed with such a wide range of artists, including everyone from Maynard Ferguson to Bonnie Tyler, Maria Muldaur, Vernon Reid, Mark Murphy, Alex Skolnick, Rodrigo y Gabriela, Sean Pelton. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Nathan is a winner of the Milt Hinton Scholarship and was also a participant in the Betty Carter Jazz Ahead program. Currently very active on the New York music scene. This is his first time on For Bass Players Only. Welcome, Nathan. Great to have you on my show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, John.
Boy, I think of so many questions just from reading all those people there. I want to, well, we'll get to them. I want to ask you about Maynard. I want to ask you about Maria Muldaur. I want to ask you about Alex Skolnick and Mark Murphy. I saw it Baker's Keyboard Lounge in Detroit about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But let's start from the beginning. I mentioned you're from a musical family, so I want to hear you describe your musical upbringing. How would what was that like for you in terms of your surroundings? Did you hear records playing? Your parents, your brothers and sisters, they into their music? Jump in
Right.
anyway.
I would say the one thing that was constant was that there would be something playing all the time, whether it was, music on the radio, vinyl, cassette tapes, or my parents rehearsing or my dad practicing the piano. A lot of times, most of what I heard growing up in my early years was just my dad playing piano. And he would run through a lot of standards and work on different things he was working on, voicings or whatever, and practicing. They would rehearse as a group. My parents play professionally. They've been playing together since 1970. My brother's a drummer, but even if I go back a few generations, there's other musicians in the family on both sides of my parents. My father, my father's two brothers. One is a studio guy and a saxophone player, and his name is Jamie Peck. He won an Emmy for a documentary music called Pittsburgh from the Air, which aired maybe 10 years ago or something on PBS. The other brother is a well-known country and studio pop drummer at Nashville, John Peck. My mom's side was mainly country musicians. Her parents were known as Troy and Barbara Ferguson, and they played all over Philly and all over New York City in the 60s. And they actually held down a steady gig in Times Square at a place called Olenny's Time Cafe. And that was in the mid or late 60s. And they were the only people doing a regular country gig in Manhattan around that time, is what I was told. But anyway, fast forward to my era. I grew up in this musical family with my mom's a singer, country singer. She became a jazz singer. My dad's a jazz piano player and writes things he writes a lot of music in a traditional jazz song form, like Great American Songbook style, but also writes a lot of funk and fusion stuff. He's just a very broad kind of guy. Cool. I got my start on piano when I was about 5. Went through a handful of instruments, played clarinet, saxophone, alto sax, bari sax. I messed around with the drums constantly. I really thought I was going to be a drummer, like for real. But all of that was kind of preparing me for the kind of bass player I guess I would be. You know, I gravitated towards bass after I was playing bari sax. That kind of got me tuned into the low end. And I still play saxophone, but you know, I'm a bass player now for 32 years or so, 33, going on 33 years. When I first started, I was sitting in with my parents. My dad played a lot of left-hand bass and he would kick bass pedals, MIDI bass pedals, you know. And he just made charts for me, chord charts. And I understood at that time when I was like 14, I was starting to sit in on bass. I understood chord qualities. I knew how to read. I wasn't a great reader. But I had piano lessons, so I could read. I knew notation. I knew, you know, I knew I had a great ear. Basically, my ears kind of led me to the right notes. Whatever I really hadn't gotten a grip on technically at that point, or harmonically yet, my ears would take me there. Like I would naturally not play a major third on a minor key. I just wouldn't do it. It just was. And that's how I knew, okay, well, I know I'm not going to play that note. So that means I'm hearing something. And plus, walking around for 14 years singing bass lines and melodies, it's like I kind of knew where I was headed.
Yeah.
The one thing was, it wasn't like, what are you going to do when you get out of high school? It was like, which instrument are you going to decide on, you know? Because everybody plays. So
Within your family, you mean, or
within my family? Yeah, just like within my family, you know, my high school people, teachers, and guidance counselors wanted to guide me towards some academic thing, you know.
Did a real job.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I knew I wanted to be a player. I do teach occasionally for select people. I'm not actively an active teacher, though. I occasionally have students, but I mainly play and tour. So sitting in with them, by age 15, I was starting to get called for some gigs, subbing for some older guys. At that point, there was sort of a turnover where there were some older guys that were retiring, and I happened to get a few more gigs. And then I think, you know, by the time I gigged with my family, mainly through high school, by the time I got out of high school, then I started working with like the people you mentioned. Like I started working with Roger Humphreys and pianist David Budway, who's from Pittsburgh, who is in New York now, has a jazz club called Maureen's Jazz Cellar up in Nyack.
Budwig, you said?
Budway, David Budway.
Oh, Budway. I was
Sorry,
going to ask if he was related to Monty Budwig. I thought Budwig. Okay.
Okay. So, but you know, I'd say how I got into it was just being around it a lot, having the opportunities, playing an instrument that it seemed just like everybody needed bass. And I knew there was like, okay, there's tons of saxophone players, tons of people want to play piano and guitar and drums and sing and everything. And it's like, who's playing bass? Oh, these people, you know, like, and then I just got deeper and deeper into it. It seemed like something that I could do. And right off the bat, my parents were telling me, "Oh, you're getting a good sound out of that thing." And the funny thing is, when the first day they brought it out and gave it to me, I thought it was a guitar, and I thought I got excited. And they go, "No, this is a bass. You wanted a bass, right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did want a bass." Like at that point, I was still kind of fuzzy on what I wanted to do, but I played that thing. It was a Kramer. I still have it. It's a Kramer Pioneer bass, early '80s Kramer Pioneer, maple neck, heavy bass, Fender copy, but they kind of had beaten Fender a little bit at their game, and they were making really good stuff in the early '80s on those instruments. And that bass, I played that bass all the way till I moved to New York, until I got into playing high-end Sadowskis and stuff, you know. So, you know, it's just after moving to New York, I got a lot of opportunities to grow. Touring, you know, I did 2 Jazz Ambassadors tours, like the State Department tours through the Kennedy Center. That involved a lot of teaching, but a lot of touring around different parts of the world that don't get exposure to American music. Yeah, I don't know where
going back to when you first, you know, I was going to say fell in love with the bass. That's probably not too far from the truth. But when you discovered it and got into it, you must have started listening to music differently, listening for the bass. Who were some of your bass player influences? Who got your attention in those days?
I think my bridge from listening to, you know, what my peers were listening to, which would have been kids my age at the time, were into the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Nirvana and Soundgarden and the early '90s stuff, and as well as everything that was on the radio, because you still had all the 60s and 70s stuff getting played on the oldie stations. Heck, there was 50s music still on the radio back then on oldie stations. So I was already into the playing of I liked Living Color, I liked Flea. I mean, not Flea. I mean, Muzz Skillings. I liked
Early Living Color.
Early Living Color. I liked Flea's playing a lot. I knew I wasn't exactly going to be headed towards that direction, because I was also drawn more towards softer aesthetics of jazz, and I also had a desire to play acoustic bass. I would say my bridge from like all that rock stuff to jazz probably would have been Tower of Power, which I had listened to already prior to playing bass. So Rocco Prestia.
Yeah.
And then my dad got me into Jocko early on. And so when I was 14, I was listening to Jocko's first album, and I was listening to Heavy Weather. And, then I progressed through the various eras of Weather Report.
Well, excuse me, what was your reaction when after listening to all the stuff you just rattled off, and then I listened to Jocko's first album, there must have been some kind of reaction that you remember?
It was mind blowing. At the same time, I wasn't really fully aware of all that I was hearing. And I think his album, that album in particular, is like that for almost everybody. Like you listen to it in one pass and you're like, God, there's so much hip stuff going on there. It was like I couldn't get past Donna Lee, because I hadn't even really gotten into playing that many rhythm changes tunes yet, let alone know what Donna Lee was, because I didn't even know Oleo at the time, or I Got Rhythm. So it was sort of a little bit too much too soon. Like, they should have said, okay, here's I Got Rhythm, and, George Gershwin. And now, other people write songs based on that form. And then there's a song called Donna Lee, which is either a Charlie Parker solo or he wrote it. I'm not sure exactly if he wrote it or if it was somebody transcribed it and it was a solo or something. I've heard things like that, but Charlie Parker supposedly wrote Donna Lee. And then Jocko's playing. Was it somebody?
Historians say it was Miles Davis.
Is that right?
It's always been hard for me to believe it. It sounds so much more like a tune that Bird would have written than Miles. But
he went around taking credit for a lot of things, and we can leave it at that, right?
I think he's due a lot of credit too, though.
Yeah, that's true. He is. Yeah. So what was my reaction? I'd say I knew that I wanted to play more jazz. I knew I liked rock. I liked the energy of rock. But I knew I also wanted to be a soloist, and I wanted to, be able to just cover all kinds of bass playing. I was also at the time into this kind of like niche 80s fusion band called Flim and the BBs.
Oh, Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, Jimmy Johnson. So honestly, my actual earliest influence on bass would have been Jimmy Johnson, because my Uncle Jamie gave me a tape of the album Big Notes when I was 9. So at 9 years old, I was listening to all those tunes. And I don't know if you know that album or not, but compositionally, I mean, it goes in so many beautiful directions. Not atonal. I mean, occasionally if it's in the writing, but really harmonically, like modern jazz harmony. Lots of complex split chords and sus chords and 2 chords over. All kinds of crazy sharp 5 type harmony here and there that resolve really in a beautiful way, and great bass playing for 6-string fretless bass. So at the time I was thinking, wow, I love this at 9 years old. I didn't know why, but the reason why is because I wanted more of that intense harmony, that level of harmony that you get with modern jazz, and jazz in general, So that I should have mentioned Jimmy Johnson first. He's probably my earliest influence, on bass,
Yeah.
Great
player.
Yeah.
Hey, I was curious, when were you with Maynard?
Yeah, 1999 to 2000. Yeah.
Okay, because I was up for that gig. I was this close to getting it. I had a really strong recommendation from one of the sax players in the band.
Okay.
And it was between me and another guy who had gotten a really strong recommendation from the outgoing bass player in the band. And I think they did the right thing. They said, well, we're going with this guy with Niels. I forgot his last name, Nils. Good guy, good player, great player. And I
Yeah,
said, well, the player had been going over the book with him, and
yeah,
so that's why they met. But now he
sure.
was. I wanted to play with him. I wanted to play with Oscar. I wanted
Oh,
to play with Ray Charles. I wanted to play with the tops and the temps. All that stuff.
oh, dude, that would
But
just
yeah,
Ray Charles. No, that.
yeah, back in those days. Hey, Maria, did I pronounce her name right? Muldaur,
I
Muldaur.
believe so. Yeah, Muldaur or Muldaur. Yeah, I
I
forget.
just well at Midnight at the Oasis, obviously the
Yeah,
first thing that comes
yeah,
to mind. I remember that back in the '70s, and there's such beautiful guitar playing on that
yeah.
record. I don't even know who that was back way back on the record, but you must have played that song a few times, huh?
I did do that song a number of times. I did a handful of regional East Coast tours with her and her band. That was a long time ago. God, it was at least 15 years ago or something.
Didn't she just pass away not too long ago?
She may have. I can't remember. I lost touch. I was in touch with her people. I mean, I never really had like it was in touch with her. Of course, when we were playing, it was before texting and social things were so huge. But yeah, I think when I was playing with her, it was like 2005. But I did get to play that song, and we did her whole like Peggy Lee tribute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Alex Skolnick, I got to
Oh,
know
and
him.
same trio that backed up Mark Murphy was that band. That was
Well,
me and drummer John Weekon, who's married to Ingrid Jensen, the jazz trumpet player, and a guy named I'm blanking on his name now. He passed away now. A pianist, Josh Wolf. Also, this tree we also backed up Mark Murphy around the same time. It's just fun times, good times. Yeah.
yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
like you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Alex Skolnick, I had the
Yeah.
privilege. Actually, I interviewed him. I have another
Yeah.
segment for GuitarPlayersOnly.com.
Oh, great.
But I used to get invited to the Warwick base camps in
Mhm. Yeah.
Markirch in Germany. And
Yeah.
one year he was there. He's not a bass player, but they
Great.
needed to round it out. Chester
Yep.
Thompson used to come and play
Oh,
drums.
wow.
And yeah, those were great. So I interviewed him and we got to hang and we jammed together.
Oh,
Really,
that's great.
really nice guy. Tell me about your experience with Alex.
So Alex, I've been playing with Alex since 2003. Uh, Shortly after moving to New York, I got a call from his drummer, who is an old buddy of mine from Pittsburgh, another Pittsburgh guy, Matt Zabrowski.
Mhm.
And he had left Pittsburgh before me. He went to the new school, met Alex in a theory class as Alex was uh, relearning how to play, sort of like he was already 30 and he was going back to school to like try to fill in all the things that he felt like he was missing by being a metal god. I guess, which,
Yeah.
I would say he probably wasn't really missing anything. I think he just did it for himself because he wanted something he wanted to do. Anyway, they met, had this band, this idea of taking rock tunes and had metal anthems and turning them into acoustic trio songs.
Yep.
I showed up about a year into that band, and 6 months later, their bass player quit, got another gig. Their bass player from the first album was a guy named John Davis, who went to play with Jojo Meyer, the drummer. So he was in a band with him called Nerve. So anyway, I joined the band, and now we've been playing. We've been playing since then. We've got eight albums out.
Wow.
Alex is a great guy to play with, and play for, and he's just an amazing person. Just writes beautiful music. He's very, very true, like very true to himself. He knows what he's good at. He knows what he wants to work on. He is as a constant professional. He's just forging ahead all the time. We have a ninth album coming out in 2025. We just recorded, and we just made a video for it. The song that we made the video for is called "Prove You're Not a Robot," like one of those buttons you have to click on. So, and in the video, we did some
Are you
slightly
human?
robotic things.
Yeah.
That trio is great. That's one of my favorite gigs, if not my favorite gig, because we really get to explore and play in a jazz context, but we're also playing in a rock context. It started out as an upright gig. I still play upright in the band, but I play a lot of electric now. Some of the stuff has gotten a little bit more edgy and fusion in the last several years. So, portability is an issue these days. Like, I may just take electric on the next tour. I'm not sure. Don't tell anyone. Everybody wants to see me freaking out on upright in a rock band, but it's honestly like a nightmare to travel with. And unless they get a good one for me, it's hard to do that, you know? Yeah.
Uh, yeah, those jazz trio records are great. They're so easy on the ears,
Yeah.
and don't tell Alex, but I like those better than the Testament stuff.
You do. Yeah.
I have an album. What's I can't remember the title, but I think Detroit Rock City is on that album.
He record, yeah, that's on the first one. That's on Goodbye to Romance, standards for new generation. Yeah. 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 They said, hey, Detroit Rock City is already kind of a shuffle. Let's just swing it and play the melody. Let's just play it and then throw in some alterations here and there. And they got to breathe new life into it. And honestly, I think that song, when that came out, that was before the band The Bad Plus was out. And I think, honestly, they got the idea for The Bad Plus from the Alex Skolnick Trio in some ways, you know.
I interviewed that bass player, and I can't remember what's his name.
That's Ivan Opsvig, right?
No, with the Bad Plus.
Oh no, Bad Plus. What is his name? I'm right blanking. Not Dave King. That's the drummer. Blanking on his name.
I don't know. It's somewhere back here in my mental Rolodex.
Like, I don't think they took the idea. Everybody was doing that already, I guess, covering pop tunes and jazz for years. But in that moment, it was like this band came out. We were covering heavy metal and rock, and literally 6 months later, that band was playing similar stuff. You know.
How did you learn to play the upright? Did you go through a classical method with the Samandel book and the bow and all that, or did you just kind of figure it out, or what?
Yeah, early on, I was just going for it, playing by ear, but I was in orchestra in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, not having any string classes prior to that. They let me join. I had to audition, but I was able to read enough and play enough of what they were doing in 10th grade to get in. I studied with a few people here and there. I didn't go to school officially, but I hung around a lot of bass players in Pittsburgh growing up, and just watched people constantly. I mean, I really learned a lot about technique and form just by watching guys, just by watching great jazz guys, or going to see the symphony play. And watching, how they held their hands and how they held the bow, and then going and picking guys' brains. And it was like, I didn't feel like I needed to get, to just focus on just studying. I didn't really want to just study like classical bass, although I'm sure it would have been great for me. But what I got was I tried to just zero on specific things that I felt like I needed, that said, to do an orchestra gig, I would definitely have to prep for it. It's not my bag as much as swinging out and playing jazz, but I loved doing it. And I did some regional orchestra work in my early 20s, and it felt great. I mean, it's just such a different feeling, and it's such a relaxing way to play. Even if you're playing stuff that's intense, it's different than playing in a jazz thing where you're constantly like, checking in with everybody and like, digging in and watching everybody. This is more like, this is what we're going to do, everybody, and a different mindset, but, I studied with a handful of people, and I think because I focused on upright more than electric early on, is for me, like I was mainly an upright player for years. And honestly, like I'd say at this point, I'm kind of split 50-50, but it used to be more like 80-20. Like it used to be like I'd get an electric gig and it would just be like funky jazz or a wedding or something, but everything else would be upright. Now it's like kind of back, I do a singer-songwriter gig, could be on upright, could be on electric, either one. Maybe they want both. Sometimes they want that and a fretless bass. Like, why do I have to do too many things? It's just more gear,
Well,
I wanted to play both. I didn't know I would have to bring both.
I loved playing in orchestra, and I wasn't playing upright in high school, but in college and then in graduate school, and played in the orchestras. And I played in a community orchestra. But to your point about, I was in Miami for 6 years.
Wow.
And I was doing between 400 and 500 gigs a year, shows and sessions and everything. So upright electric. and I really wanted to get into the theater scene.
Yeah.
Well, I found out who the contractor was. I schmoozed the guy for 2 years.
Woo.
He finally called me to do Into the Woods,
Oh.
Broadway show. So Cleo Lane was the star.
Mm.
Stephen Sondheim's coming to the rehearsals. And oh my God, I got out my Simandl and my other books, and I'm practicing every bowing as if I'm going to have a solo in that style of bowing. And I just upright, everything, just everything I ever learned. And I was ready. And I got to the rehearsal, and 80% of the show was dum, dum, dum,
Yeah.
dum,
Yep.
dum, 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 dum.
Yep.
There was some cool stuff there too. But hey, it doesn't hurt to be prepared.
Yeah. You mentioned Simandl, and I forgot I didn't get to the answer, but I did study out of the Simandl book at my orchestra teacher's recommendation in high school, and I didn't complete it, but I got enough out of it to like basically figure out how to get up and down. But you know what I got a lot out of was that Rabath book, Francois Rabath's book.
I interviewed him.
You did? Oh,
yeah, it's on this site.
Wow.
I interviewed Francois Rabath and Gary Carr on the same day.
Wow. Oh, amazing.
Yeah. But Rabath, the bowings, and man,
that his stuff opened me up a little bit. Like, especially just like how he holds the neck. He puts his thumb up here rather than down. The little things like that, and just learning that, like, hey, move your thumb up here if it feels better. Play the note, you know?
Do you know how he came up with that?
Hmm.
He was on the beach and he saw a crab go by, and he just marveled at it. He said, look at the symmetry, look at the balance, look at, why can't we do that with our fingers? That's how he came up with his crab technique.
Right.
He's
at that point in time, I was clinching really hard and trying to adhere to this Simandl form, and like really, really trying to. And then I would watch jazz guys and go like, well, some of them are really playing like correctly, and some of them are just grabbing low F like this, and then just like just getting around and using a combination of a lot of different techniques. And so I think over the years I've kind of built my own like hybrid way of playing. I mean, I even use my third finger sometimes in a solo. I'll do a pull off of B flat and play A here because that's what's available at the moment. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah, I do the opposite. I use a lot of the upright fingering on the electric because it's more comfortable for me than stretching. But to your point on that, with Louis Johnson on the electric bass, putting his left thumb over the top of the fingerboard, is that wrong? I mean, it's. Mean, when I was coming up, that was like borderline criminal.
Yeah.
But hey, it worked for him.
And then Larry Graham too, I think, did that.
I don't know about that, but could be.
That's like a Stevie. That's like a blues guitar thing. Like, I want to say Stevie Ray Vaughan, but it goes way back before him. Like grabbing a low G here like that.
What's keeping you busy these days, Nathan?
Okay, let's see. Well, I've been in the studio a lot. I'm playing bass on an album the band is called Shelter Dogs, and it's a guitar player named Mark Cimino, who's from New York. Devin Townsend. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Devin Townsend.
I interviewed him a couple times too. He was at one of those Warwick camps in Germany.
Oh yeah. He's just incredible.
And we were at the same the London-based guitar show. He was there also. Well, guitar and bass. So he's from Canada.
He's from Canada. Yeah. So he's in this band.
Cool. Tell him I said hello.
I will. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So he's on it. Brooks Wackerman is on drums. He's Chad Wackerman's brother, LA rock drummer, one of the most amazing drummers I've ever worked with. It's an album that's being recorded in LA, New York, and in Toronto. Basically, everyone's doing things from home or going to a studio locally. It's a really great melodic modern rock album that has a lot of beautiful stuff, the right amount of aggression, the right amount of like fireworks. Steve Vai's guesting on a couple songs on solo on guitar. It's being produced by Mike Klink, who did Appetite for Destruction and Eye of the Tiger and all that. So I'm really excited about that. I've been putting a lot of time into that lately. I'm like halfway done with. I'm gonna do 10 songs. We've got 5 songs done already. And let's see what else lately. I mentioned the Alex Skolnick album that's coming out soon in the video. What else am I doing here? I wrote down a couple notes here. Let me see. Um, oh, where is it? Oh, yeah. I have this little studio here. I've been getting busy recording my own stuff, and over the last year, I've been doing a lot of test recordings just to see, what can I carry out down here in a pretty medium-sized basement, with a lot of good gear and good paneling and stuff. And so after I did a lot of uh tests and stuff, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do a real album. And I got a couple of great people. I'm gonna have a trio album with Paul Bolenbach on guitar and Paul Wells on drums. Two great New York City players. Paul Bolenbach toured with Jeff Tain Watts and Ravi Coltrane and Stanley Turrentine, and Paul Wells played with Joey DiFrancesco and Jack McDuff. And I mean, these guys are a couple of my favorite musicians, and like just super swing. And so we got together. We've had 3 sessions, and I'm gonna be mixing it probably next month, and shoot for some. I might shoot for a January release. I'm not sure. I gotta look at the timing of it, but that's gonna be good. That's gonna be standards and some original songs, and acoustic bass, drums, and guitar. And other than that, a lot of one-off gigs in the city this summer. A lot of jazz clubs. Like I play at this is a newish club called Ornithology that I'm going to be playing at soon with a great saxophone player, Sam Dillon. And I also play at a really well-known brewery, which my friend runs, called Fifth Hammer Brewery in Long Island City. And I play there with like Ari Honig on drums and Benito Gonzalez on piano. And that's sort of, I do that semi-regularly. Let's see what else. Trying to think. I just actually have had this last week or so, I've had some downtime, which has been nice too. So I've actually been working out.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think there's
Well,
anything
well,
noteworthy.
keep us posted, and if you think of anything,
Yeah,
you mentioned you're not really a teacher. You've done some of it, or
yeah,
once in a while you do a little
yeah,
bit of it here and there. For Bass Players Only is
yeah,
really a bass instruction site,
sure.
and I've got people from pretty much all 50 states now
Yeah.
and 50, 60 countries worldwide. I don't know, maybe more
Wow.
than that now. And these people, I mentioned, I'm kind of playing around with the term silver aged. Most
Right.
of my students are in their 50s, 60s,
Yeah.
70s. I've got students in their 80s, both men
Wow.
and women.
Oh, that's great.
So they're not trying to make a career they're not trying to be
Yeah.
rock stars. They
Yeah.
they want to get together with their buddies and play some classic rock riffs
Yeah.
or some blues shuffles, maybe some
Mhm.
easy bass or funk R&B, whatever it is. Some of them, which surprised me at first, are totally content to just sit in a room by themselves and play.
Mhm.
Others want to get together and play in a club, a restaurant, a bar, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, and some of what happens to us when we get into our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, things
Yeah.
like arthritis or
Yeah.
tendonitis or things like that may creep in. I'm just telling you all this to give you a context
I hear
because
you.
I want to ask you, now that you know who we're talking about,
Yeah.
what advice can you impart to somebody like that who wants to learn bass? What do you think they should be thinking about? What kind of goals should they have? What kind of questions should they be asking? Anything like that. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, as I said before, like when I mentioned that I don't teach, I just want to say, like, it's not like I have anything against it. I actually really enjoy it. Um, However, you know, teaching beginners as kids versus adults, I find very different.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
always wanted to teach adults and like people like you're talking about. I've had a lot of people come to me, they're like, my son wants to play, he's 10 years old, he wants to play bass, and it's like, man, just to push a string down as a 10-year-old is hard. Okay. Anyway, that just to preface that, I do like to teach though. What I would have to say is to just keep doing it and like don't miss a day, try to keep that instrument in your hand every day as long as possible. That if too much time goes by and you don't get back to things start to slip, especially if you're trying to also tie in like learning theory and, how to walk over changes and stuff like that. I think that the one thing I would stress for people that like want to get better, want to learn how to play or get better playing, or they're coming to it later in life or in midlife and feel like, hey, I do have time for this now. Is to just chip away at it every day, even if it's 15 minutes. My dad used to get on me about practicing, and he would say, like, don't practice on the gig. Play what you know on the gig and play it well. Practice at home. But then I wasn't a big practicer early on because my I didn't know what to practice, and I had to figure out some things to work on. And actually, the first book that I got was the Ray Brown's bass method. Ray Brown's book one,
It's
amazing.
called Volume One. He never wrote a
I
volume.
know it's like a joke, like History of the World Part One. And then I got actually right after that I got Rufus's book, Rufus Reed's the first book, and between
The
two books,
Evolving Bassist.
Evolving Bassist, I had things to work on, but then it was like, okay, but I didn't know how much time. I knew that I had a French horn friend that was playing 6 hours a day. Well, you got to do that to keep your embouchure together, but maybe to be a good bass player, you just have to focus on it, every day, some amount of time. I'm not sure if 6 hours. I guess what I'm getting to is I think some people think I'm not going to be getting anywhere unless I put in like, 2 hours or 6 hours or all day, every day. And really, my dad would say 15 minutes a day. Just keep yourself fresh and work. If that's all you got, and then you want to go out and hang with your friends, or you got stuff to do, or if you can do a half hour or sit down and just, now we have tablets and phones and stuff. Even if you don't have your instrument, if you're on a train on the way to work and you got a tablet and you can sit and look and see if you can train yourself to sight sing, maybe, see if you can think, okay, I see low F. Let me think, what does that sound like? That's also practicing. It's training your mind and your ear, not just like, okay, well, I'm going to da 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 da, boom, G, let's see, G A E, G D A E, E F, go F, boo, and try to walk a bass line maybe without the instrument, things like that you can do when no one's looking, and you don't even have to be, okay, I'm going to set up my music stand and my book and I'm going to, get real serious and like, just, it's going to be grueling. I'm going to be sweating in a dark basement, practicing bowing until I get good and stuff. It's got to be fun. First of all, it's got to be fun. So if that's like playing along with those Abersold records, playing along with that stuff where you fade to one side to cut out the bass, or just sitting down and seeing, put a metronome on and see if you can like walk really slow and keep the time. Doom, 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 boom, boom, doom, doom, and think triplets. Or if it's rock stuff they're into, see if they can play what they want to play, but play it slowly and just do it without even thinking about practicing, I think is actually good training for the subconscious bass mind. When you do stuff and you're just sitting there, my wife would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking about picking because now I'm into guitar. And I'm thinking about up and down rather than doing this, although I do play guitar like this pretty good, but I want to get this together now, So that was my pandemic project, was like, I kind of like to learn how to play guitar. Now I have 5 guitars.
I love what you're saying because I
Just
talk
a little bit every day. It helps,
Like no, like when the microwave goes off, or a doorbell, doom doom. That's a major third.
Yes.
My dad had a car one time. When you opened up the door, it went da 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 da. Whatever the notes were, I said, "That's a Love Supreme."
Yeah.
The first.
Oh yeah.
So the people around you may think you're crazy, but
Yeah.
it's good ear training. I
Yeah.
love what you're saying.
And then also to get into the numbers, like it doesn't have to be something that some people are like, I don't want to learn theory and notation because I don't want to like ruin my natural thing. And then other people like have to learn notation and they don't develop their ear. I'd say try to develop your ears and your brain at the same time. If you're in F, think F is 1. And then test yourself. What's the 6 of F? What's the flat 9 of F? And then do that in all 12 keys. This is the kind of stuff I was actually doing when I was a little kid, because I would do it to pass the time on a car ride. I would think thirds and fifths, and then I would go, "Whoa, what does a sharp 5 sound like?" And I would sing up the scale, and that's all ear training. Like you don't need your instrument unless you're like really kind of tone deaf, and then maybe you need like you know something different, like piano. I don't know, but say piano is probably a good thing to have around too,
Definitely.
for bass
Yeah.
players.
Awesome. Tell me briefly, I see
Yeah.
you've got a lot of gear, but I just wanted to know if I've talked to a lot of bass players. I've interviewed over 850 bass players.
Wow.
Some of them say, "Oh, I have 300 basses." And when they say that, I say, "Yeah, I bet when you go to play, you always gravitate to the same one or two or maybe three." And it's, yeah, I do. So I just preface that. What are your main go-to basses? I want to ask you about strings and
Yeah.
effects, gear and amps and stuff like that. So give me the condensed version.
My go-to would be my Sadowski 524 NYC PJ.
Beautiful.
I'm not sure why, but at some point when I had this built in 2013. I tested all the different pickup configurations, and I really fell in love with the PJ.
Yeah.
Both pickups on full. That sound to me, just it has the right amount of cut, but also the right amount of bottom end, and like I like the slap and the snap of it. And then I realized that a lot of my favorite players early on played PJs, like Muzz Skillings. I mean, I'm sure they played other things too, but also who's the other guy? Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, and God, there's somebody else too that was really like they're just the sound of it got in my brain early on, and then so anyway, this is my go-to. I have
You
two other
slap on
stuff.
that bass?
What's that?
You slap on that bass?
I do. Yeah,
Is that the spacing looks a little narrow to me.
it's an 18 millimeter. You could tell from there. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I I've tried the wider spacings, and I can't get around this way as much. And I really do more of this than this. This I do this, when people want me to do it. Most of the time they don't want it, but I do it when it feels good. In
Gotcha.
the middle of a funk tune, just to pop a note, it excites things. But to do a solo like that, that's not what I do. I'm a finger style guy. So I like the narrow spacing. I like 18. But I have another one here. I have a Sadowski single cut that is it's packed right now, but basically one of either this orange Sadowski or the single cut modern, which is in a matte black, like is that what it's called? Matte? No.
Matte finish. I don't
You know
know.
when
I
it's not
love the
shiny?
the Dowskis. Again
Yeah.
to the Warwick place
Yeah.
in Germany.
Yeah.
They invited me out there when Sadowski and Warwick got together.
That's what this single cut is. It's a Warwick bass, a Metroline. Yeah.
So we're hanging with Roger. It was cool.
Yeah.
And I asked him because Will Lee and Marcus Miller,
Yeah.
they've got that. What does he call it? An ashtray or the cowboy, whatever you call it, the covers.
Oh yeah, the cover,
I
right.
said, why in the world would anybody want that?
Right.
You either got to play up here or you got to
Right.
play down here, and it's so unnatural to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is that something that ever came up in the conversation when you got your Sadowski bass?
Whether I wanted that bell cover. No, because this is a 24 fret bass, and it's sort of, and with the P pickup, it was, I think, not set up for. I mean, I don't, I never was into that too. Although I know from a guy, Paul Thompson, who runs PD
Yes,
bass.
from
Uh,
Pittsburgh.
yeah, Pittsburgh. Yeah, he's
He's awesome. I love
yeah,
him.
great bass player. And
Yeah,
teacher, and he's the guy that I watched a lot growing up. We're 4 years apart. He's 4 years older than me. I watched him all the time and got a lot of good technical things from that guy. But he used to have a 75 jazz bass, which I bought, and it had the bell cover, and he liked it because he put his wrist there, and that was where he would slap, and he would use that so he wouldn't bump the other strings.
to each his own, man.
And then he felt like, okay, then for Pitts, he didn't have the bridge cover, but for Pitts,
Yeah.
he just liked the sound, and that he said that bell cover made it so that, yeah, he had to play right here, and he liked that sound. And then when he went to slap, he could just put his wrist, the bottom of his right on that metal, which then I get it. But the thing is, like, I actually like to play like a little too close to that, so I never was interested in that. But with the Sadowski, it honestly never came up. They never asked me if I wanted to do it because I think it's more of like a full body jazz bass thing, whereas this is like a downsized, you know, they call it
What kind of strings
DDJ.
do you use, by the way?
D'Addario.
Okay.
I started playing bass in 1991, and my first set of new strings was a set of D'Addarios. And then the next time I needed strings, I got on a different brand, and then I got a different brand, and then I said, "Let me get back to this D'Addario thing." I was, 15 or 14. I like those, and I just kept buying them, and I've been playing them ever since, and now I endorse them.
Cool.
I literally only purchased a different brand maybe 3 times. I had a DR set, I had a Ken Smith set, and I had a Trace Elliott set of strings, and then
No, Trace Elliott made
I don't
strings.
think they do anymore. This would have been that would have been in 1992 or something. And then I went back to D'Addario, and then I signed with them in 2007, and the whole Alex is with them too, and I just love their stuff. I even the new formulas that come out, I dig what they do. There's a certain tonality that I like. Nothing against other brands. It's just like what I'm used to, I guess,
I understand you're a big fan of Fishman products.
I like Fishman. Yeah.
What do you use from Fishman?
Fishman, the full circle upright bass pickup and the Platinum Pro EQ, which is sort of the other half of that. A lot of guys don't know that. They just get the pickup, but the preamp is really made to go with that pickup, and it's just they work so well together. That preamp has so many cool things: the compression and the notch filter, and there's a low end roll off, which you can. There's bass, but there's also a roll off that gives you just like a slope, and it's really good. It makes that pickup, it buffers it in the right way where it like doesn't sound gnarly and nasal like they do when you just plug them in direct. Although I would say the full circle sounds very nice. Probably for me, the best sounding pickup plugged directly into anything that I've ever tried, because I've tried them all, but that one I like the best right now,
Do you use D'Addario strings on your upright too?
I have different strings on the upright. What am I using right now? I have used D'Addario strings, but I think right now I have a D'Addario D, and I have a Colstein Heritage E and A. And that's because I'm playing a gut G string by Gamut.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's sort of, I like the sound of the gut G more than the pinginess of a steel G string, until that string
your Paul
dies.
Chambers solos and stuff, you mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with this company, Gamut. They're out in Minnesota. I believe they're in Minnesota or Wisconsin, maybe, I forget. But they engineer a gut string with the properties of a steel string. They have this triple I forget what they call it, triple core or something, and it's 3 pieces of gut instead of 2 wound together. And when you play up this thing up the neck, I mean, it actually feels and sounds a lot like a steel string. It's just got that warmth. It's not a fuzzy tubbiness or a clickiness. It's like, it's really a nice tone. It's called the Gamut Pistoy is the model. So based around that, I had to figure out what other strings were going to work, because I really wanted that sound, and now I've had that string on there for like 10 years basically. So for 10 years I've been playing with a mismatch set.
Wow. What about amps? What kind of amp do you use?
Amps, yeah. Aguilar. Aguilar. Yeah, I
You
have
won't go wrong with them.
Yeah, I've prior to I've endorsing Aguilar since 2011. Prior to that, I had a handful of other things. They were great, but there's something about the clarity and the amount of nuance that you get with I have the Tonehammer 500, I have a 350, I have the 2SLs 12s, I have the SL 410, and then I just got the SL 110, which I really liked for like little smaller gigs. But that speaker is no joke. I mean, you can actually play 5-string bass through that, the 110. I really like that. What I play is what I feel like I should be hearing, not something that's like that I need to like work on to sculpt into what I actually hear. Now, I know other people that have said, well, it doesn't, I want more highs, or it doesn't sound like a rock amp. I'm used to amps sounding like, and I'm like, turn up the highs, turn it up. It's all there.
Yeah.
Everything you want is there. They just make it so that when you plug in and it's flat, it sounds flat, with a little bit of character, a little bit of oomph, but not like, it doesn't hit you with like a ton of highs right off the bat. But then, maybe you need a different amp for doing metal and stuff. I think Aguilar is the perfect amp for guys that play a lot of styles, guys that play everything from rock to jazz and funk and pop, that need an amp that can like do it all. That for me, that amp is like, because it sounds great for upright. If the electric stuff is even better, I mean, it's just, I love it. I've used their stuff for a long time. Yeah.
Cool.
Very happy with Aguilar stuff. Yeah.
This is great, Nathan. I'm getting so much great. There's so much value in this interview. I do have
Thanks.
one.
I hope I'm not rambling too much.
No. I have one more question for you. If you can imagine, especially given your upbringing and your background, what would you be if you were not a bass player? But it's got to be something outside of music. You can't say a drummer.
Outside of music. Racing cars?
You're at least the third person, I think, that's given me that answer.
Like this, maybe?
You
Or
mean,
this?
yeah. What did I used to have? Not Hot Wheels. It was the Motorific. Is that a Jaguar?
It's a Ferrari.
Oh, Ferrari.
I mean, I'm not a Ferrari freak. I just have a couple.
I could discern the spacing on your 5-string, but I couldn't tell the difference between.
Here's a Z8. So these are I've been collecting these since I was 10. These are 1/18th scale metal models by Barago, an Italian company, and I still collect them. Here's that same Ferrari, but in a different red. So I like cars. I'm a car guy. Here's a 356. And I think I would probably, outside of, if I wasn't in music, I would have probably done something like race car instruction, which is something that I still think about. Okay. You can go to Watkins Glen or any racetrack, professional racetrack, and you can take lessons, and then you can become an instructor, and then you can teach other people how to drive fast around a track. I can't think of anything more exhilarating than playing a fast blues at 260 or driving 160. It's the same thing.
I knew a guy who went to there was a place called Skip Barber. Does that name mean
Barber?
anything?
Yeah.
I think it was in Ohio.
Yeah.
Somebody got him a gift, not to become an instructor, but just to take race.
Yeah, you do a 5-day tour with sports cars and stuff and spin them out. Yeah.
You know Adam Nitty?
Yeah. Not personally. I know him though. Yeah.
Yeah, great guy, great player. I'm pretty sure he gave me that answer. He said he'd be a race car driver. You never know. I get all kinds of interesting. Tommy Stinson from Guns N' Roses.
Oh.
I'd be a TV weatherman. I always wanted to be a TV weatherman.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, I got some great answers.
There's something about playing bass though that is similar about driving though too. There's something with it where, it's like I used to drive a 5-speed, from high school on and until 2017. So, you're steering with your left hand, you're steering the harmony, you're shifting over here. There's something to that. I don't know what it is. And also the bass's role in the whole thing is sort of, gluing it all together and steering things in the right direction to an extent. You know what I mean? It's like, there's some common threads there for me with the automobile industry, and if I'm not thinking about music, I'm reading about cars, basically. So I think
the shift in time with the music.
Yeah, when I turn 50, I'm gonna have to get some kind of midlife sports car. I think.
There you go.
Maybe something simple. Maybe an original Mazda Miata would be fun.
It's been done before.
Yeah, it's been done.
Well, this is great. Thanks so much. I'm so happy we got a chance to do this. And
Me too.
love what you do. And hey, if you ever come through Michigan,
Yeah.
if you tour with the Alex Skolnick trio, I'd love to see that.
Sure. Oh
Right?
yeah, definitely. For
Love to
sure.
meet you in person.
Of course. And if you're ever in New York City, you got a place to stay. Call me,
Yeah, my wife and I are about due for another trip back. We
Oh,
haven't been
you got to
there.
come out. I'm right here in Western Nassau County, 5 miles from the Queens border. It's beautiful. Right. One of the nicest, oldest New York City suburbs called Mineola, New York. Beautiful place.
Cool. Last time I was there, I was in the audience for the David Letterman show, so that
Oh,
gives
wow.
you an idea. But it was cool
Yeah.
talking to Will afterwards, and
Yeah.
Will even got a picture up on. He says, I said, "Can I get a picture before we leave?" He says, "Yeah. Where should we go?" I said, "How about your spot on the bandstand?" He goes,
Oh, wow.
"Good idea." And I got a
Oh,
cool
that's great.
picture.
He's one of my
Anyway,
favorites.
yeah, me too. I could
Oh,
go
the
on
other
like this all
Sadowski I
day.
have is I have a Will Lee model bass too. The Metro Will Lee
Sadowski?
Metro line. Yeah, that's my other. I have three Sadowskis. So anyway,
Yeah, great stuff. Well, I could geek out on bass with
I
you
know.
all day, but let's leave it here. But we'll open
Yeah.
it up for a follow up when that new
Okay.
record comes in. Let me know, and
I
we'll
will.
share the big time far out news with everybody.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan. You're
All
watching
right.
for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. If you've ever wanted to learn bass, you should know that right now there are thousands of people inside the For Bass Players Only community, a lot of them of the silver aged vintage. Is that good? Should I keep saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Silver sneakers, you know?
A lot of them over 50, however you want to think of yourself. Some people identify as old rockers.
Mm-hmm.
Afraid of offending people, but nobody seems to be offended. Anyway, you should come join whatever we want to call those people because they are learning bass, having the time of their life, playing music that they love. And you should experience that wonderful transformation for yourself. As I always say, you're never too old to groove. So let's play bass. Thanks again to my special guest, Nathan Peck. I will see you right back here next week, same time, same place, with another interview with an awesome bass player. In the meantime, let's play bass.